Haki is not what we all thought it was, because One Piece just revealed that Haki can be turned into physical objects, which, as I'll show you, not only confirms that Bing Sake is actually the story about Joy Boy's life, but also might answer 3 of the biggest questions in all of One Piece. How were the poneglyphs made? What is so special about Luffy's straw hat? And the biggest of them all, what actually is the One Piece? In other words, this reveal was an absolute game changer, and so we'll start with the absolutely broken ability that we saw in chapter 1122. Because with the Gorosei about to absolutely destroy the Straw Hats and their allies, the giant robot Emet shocked everyone by pulling this hidden knot and unleashing Joy Boy's stored Haki. Which kind of just sounds insane and unbelievable in so many ways. Like, what? How could Joy Boy store his Haki for literal centuries? And on top of that, how is it so mind-blowingly powerful that it completely obliterates all of the demonic Gorosei forms as well? Now, we'll of course get to how all of this is probably possible in just a minute, but now let's jump to the end of this chapter where a single line of Joy Boy's Japanese finally revealed the secret to, honestly, everything. And oh my god, I can't even tell you how shook I was when I realized this incredible secret, but let's look at it together right now, because here we get a flashback with Emet talking to Joy Boy, who unfortunately still remains in silhouette. But it is this line right here, and the part that I want to focus on is where Joy Boy says he bound or he wove his Haki, because holy crap, like this verb here, to weave or to bind or to spin, is literally the exact same verb and kanji used in one of the most mysterious lines in the song Bing Sake. Just look at this. In the second verse, the line starts with farewell to the harbor and to the weaver's town. Tsumugu, Tsumugi no Sato. And if you know anything about Bing Sake, or if you watched my very recent video breaking it down, you should know at this point that this mysterious Weaver's Town is most likely where Joy Boy started his grand adventure. In other words, the Ancient Kingdom. It could have been his actual hometown or just his main base, but regardless, we never really knew what to make of the Weaver's Town, the town where things are being spun. It was basically a giant mystery in this entire song, but now we know that Joy Boy can literally weave his Haki into physical objects, which means that the Weaver's Town was likely home to many such people who could weave Haki into objects as well. And if you aren't freaking out about this like I am right now, then let me try to explain to you why this is such a game-breaking thing. Because sure, I mean, we've seen Haki transfer to objects all throughout the story, like when Zoro coats his sword in Haki or Luffy puts his Haki into his sandals. But just to be clear, what we have seen here with Joy Boy is nothing like that. Or if it is on a completely different level. And let me try to just break down how important this concept of creating things with Haki truly is for the story. Because for one, we now know that the concept of Haki is essentially a person's willpower, right? Creating an object out of your own willpower, you're essentially passing down 2 things into that new object that you've created. First, of course, is your own power. So however strong your Haki actually is, this object that you've now created or woven with your Haki should theoretically be just as strong as well. And interestingly enough, we see exactly that play out in this chapter, I think, with the woven cord of Joy Boy's Haki being unleashed and unleashing literally the most earth-shaking burst of Haki we have seen that can be felt all the way to Marijoa, where even Emo is feeling it. So clearly the power is one thing that is transferred to that object. And to extend this concept even further, I'd bet that strings or cords were not the only thing that people of this Weaver's Town could actually create with their Haki string. For example, let's take the poneglyphs. They're made of some truly unbreakable material that also seems to have a spirit that can be heard with the voice of all things. And so I bet that the poneglyphs were actually woven from Haki as well. And funnily enough, this was actually one of my very first theories and very first videos on this channel, where I speculated that the poneglyphs were created from super powerful Haki, which is also why they are indestructible and can't be destroyed with devil fruit powers as well. And that leads us to the second thing that would surely get passed down when the Haki is woven, which is a part of the Weaver's soul or his dreams. Now, if this concept sounds a little bit confusing to you, just think about it this way. We have heard all throughout the story about the concept of inherited will, where a new generation takes up the unfulfilled dreams of their friends and family. Well, I can imagine that creating an object from Haki would also pass on the creator's own will or his dreams into that object, which could explain why certain objects objects in the world seem to have a will of their own, such as Luffy's devil fruit evading the world government and finding its way to Luffy. Or even take Emmet here for example, because we do know that he was awakened by Luffy's drums of liberation heartbeat. So I do wonder if it wasn't Emmet himself responding to Luffy's heartbeat, but rather Joy Boy's Haki inside of Emmet that then allowed him to wake up. Now that of course could also lead to the idea that Joy Boy's Haki gave Emmet his life in the first place, which is a really fascinating idea. However, Emmet does seem to have his own personality, so I don't think it is alive solely because of Joy Boy's Haki, but it might still play a role honestly. But now that we know that it is possible to weave Haki into objects or create objects out of Haki, let's turn back to how this connects to the biggest mystery in all of One Piece, because for literal decades we've been wondering what the One Piece treasure actually is. And in recent years we've kind of wondered why Roger couldn't actually use what he found on Laugh Tale. And well, with the information that we have now from the current chapter, my new theory is that the One Piece is an object literally woven out of Joy Boy and his allies Haki. It is one piece of Haki, one dream, one will, and wouldn't that actually just be so fitting? The treasure all along was everyone's combined dreams and willpower. Now of course, we don't know what shape this object will actually take. It could be something like the knot that we saw in this chapter that would unleash Haki like we have never seen before onto the world. Or it could be something a lot more practical like a weapon or a piece of clothing like a One Piece, or even a straw hat literally woven from strings made of Haki. Or perhaps, just spitballing at this point, it could be something like a great tapestry that shows the story of Joy Boy and all his friends. That idea would certainly fit with Roger's laughter when he found what was left behind. So yeah, right now this is my new favorite theory. The One Piece is an object, or maybe even a piece of clothing, again the One Piece thing, of woven Haki whose power can only be released by Joy Boy's successor, aka Luffy. So sorry if I just spoiled the ending of One Piece for you. Now let's come down out of the clouds for a moment, because so far we've discussed how this woven Haki could impact the story in the future, but we haven't actually discussed how that is possible. And really there are a lot of clues throughout the story that something like weaving or storing Haki is actually possible. The first example is of course the mysterious Weaver cards, which in case you forgot is basically life paper that is attracted to the soul of the Weaver card's owner. And to this day it's always pretty much been a real mystery how these are actually made. According to Big Mom's daughter right here, to make one of these you basically take a fingernail clipping to a special shop and the shop will make the Weaver card for you. Now of course we have never actually seen any of these shops, but hello? How do these mysterious shops actually turn a fingernail clipping into soul paper? Like that concept has always seemed very suspicious to me, but maybe whoever operates these Weaver card shops were descendants of the Weaver village and they do know how to turn Haki and souls into physical objects. Now of course there are also many other examples of storing energy in the One Piece world, such as the wind knots of Witheria, which we saw when Nami was sent to the Sky Islands during the time skip. And these really do look like the closest thing that we have to what Emmet did in this chapter, because they are both literally knots that release massive bursts of Haki. So was the Haki knot that Emmet had a similar piece of technology to the wind knots of Witheria? Now of course we don't really know, but it is certainly possible since we do know that the world before the Void Century was a lot more technologically advanced. Plus, as a little side note here, knots hold a lot of significance in Japanese culture as well. They're often thought to ward off evil and also connect to people's hearts and souls. For example, if you've ever been to a Japanese temple, you will see those ropes tied around the trees, which is literally that exact concept. So maybe it's actually just knots that are the special power that allows to store Haki. However, we can't forget about another form of stored energy with the dials of Skypiea. Now these were basically shells that could store all kinds of energy from heat to sound to wind and many other concepts as well. But besides storing energy, I don't really see how they connect to the Haki knot that we saw in this chapter, so maybe it's a little bit different here. And then of course we also can't forget about the famous black blades, which are famous swords that have permanently turn black and become more powerful. And while we don't actually know how a sword becomes a black blade, the most common theory is that so much powerful Haki has been poured into it so many times that it eventually becomes permanently infused and stronger. And actually that concept could work for Joy Boy's Haki knot as well, where he just literally poured so much of his Haki into that knot that it held that power for literal centuries. That does seem like a little bit of a long shot though, and I'd much rather believe belief that there is some specific technique or technology that actually allows Haki to be woven in this way. But then again, if only some of what we talked about here is true, does that mean that Oda truly had the basic idea of Haki already planned out all this time? Basically from the beginning of the story? I mean, it's still hard to know at this point, but one undeniable fact is that Joy Boy's Haki knot was the greatest demonstration of Haki we've seen in the entire story. So sorry Shanks, you were really impressive, but even your Haki blast in Wano doesn't come close to this, because just wow, it was so powerful, it completely obliterated the Gorosei's demon forms and then sent them all back to Marijoa, basically undoing the summoning jutsu there, I think, except for Saturn, whose body was already physically on the island. But on top of all of that, Joy Boy's Haki even triggered the world's secret ruler Imu, as we see him on the floor literally screaming and shaking as he feels Joy Boy's Haki. And while we don't know if he was feeling the Haki through the Gorosei or if Joy Boy's Haki literally reached all the way across the world, either way, we've never seen Imu shook just like this. Like seriously, he's always been calm and aloof. He didn't even get rattled when the former king of Alabaster Cobra came into his throne room and started asking questions. And so of course, once again, we have to ask, what does this actually mean? Did Joy Boy's Haki trigger some sort of PTSD inside of Imu, or was it actually painful for the world secret ruler physically? And we don't really know at this point, but if I had to guess, I'd say that feeling Joy Boy's Haki after all those centuries reminded Imu of something from the past. Because we have speculated before that Imu and Joy Boy might have been friends or maybe rivals during the Void Century. And while we don't know exactly what happened, clearly they ended up on different sides of the conflict, where Imu and the 20 Kingdoms eventually won the war. And this chapter makes it even clearer, I think, that Joy Boy was trying to become a king himself, because Emet apologized for failing to make Joy Boy king. But basically, if I had to guess here, I would say that Imu either came very close to losing, and so feeling Joy Boy's Haki again is making him remember when he almost lost, or on the other hand, perhaps Imu betrayed Joy Boy as a friend in the Void Century, and so feeling Joy Boy's Haki and presence again after all those years brought up some long hidden guilt or shame that Imu has been burying for 800 years. Again, if you watched my Being Sake theory, you will probably know that I really like the idea that Imu and Joy Boy might have even been brothers. Either way, Imu clearly isn't thrilled to feel Joy Boy's Haki here again, although I do wonder if there was something extra special about Joy Boy's Haki as well. Like, I think we can all assume at this point that it was advanced Conqueror's Haki that was stored in that knot, right? But what made this blast so powerful? Was it just that Joy Boy is such a Chad that his Haki levels are absolutely off the charts, or was it actually an even greater form of Haki that we don't even know about yet? Either way, it really seems like Joy Boy's Haki is the main key to eventually taking down Imu and the Gorosei, basically being a big piece of foreshadowing here. And that of course means that Luffy will be having to learn how to awaken this special type of Haki, or at least reach Joy Boy's levels of advanced conquerors. And what better person to learn from than Shanks on Elbaf, where the crew does now seems to be heading next. Now, one thing I'm really worried about though is that if it is really Joy Boy's Haki that is special, does that mean that no one else will be able to fight any of the Gorosei except Luffy? Because honestly, that would be a little bit disappointing. I mean, I'd at least expect Zoro or maybe someone like Shanks or even Sabo to be able to fight them as well, because surely it won't just be Luffy taking on all of the Gorosei and Imu all by himself, right? So hopefully these secret Haki techniques are something that many characters can learn, at least a handful. And speaking of taking down the Gorosei though, now that the threat of them on Egghead Island is actually gone, let's talk about what we actually know about their powers at this point as well. And there are actually two main mysteries that I want to address here. First, what are their real powers? Still asking that question. And secondly, how do you defeat these guys for good? Also, I quickly want to apologize for my terrible voice. I've been traveling, as you can see, and I also have like a slight cold, so my voice has been all over the place, but we're powering through. So just to recap a little bit here, Saint Saturn was the first and only Gorosei to physically be at Egghead Island. The other four were all summoned from Marijoa using those black summoning circles back in chapter 1109, and they only appeared in their demonic forms once they emerged from their summoning circles. Even Saturn himself somehow summoned himself onto the island. I mean, last we saw he was chilling on the boat and then all of a sudden he was popping out of the magic circle. And I gotta say, all of that is really a little bit sus to me. I kind of get the others needing to be summoned from so far away, but why didn't Saturn just stroll up and then transform normally like all other Devil Fruit users would do? Well, I think that the best answer is that those weren't their real bodies, but were more some sort of magical projection. I mean, think about it, they couldn't even really be damaged and they just regenerate every single time they were hit, no matter how devastatingly. And even Emet's Haki Blast just sent them back to their regular form. So I'd actually bet some money on the Gorosei that we saw on Egghead not being their actual true forms. And now this could be the result of either their own Devil Fruits, Emo's Devil Fruit, or some other non-Devil Fruit power that they all possess as well. Although this chapter did give some evidence that these demonic forms are the result of some sort of Devil Fruit power, since Haki is known to do counter Devil Fruit abilities in particular. But whatever the true nature of the Gorosei's powers might be though, they did cause a ton of damage to both the entire island and all of the allies. Because I mean, their body count at least was certainly very real and they nearly destroyed all of Egghead Island. On top of that, they could regenerate from any attack, even having their head destroyed, which is insane, and even had special abilities like poison, fire and ice, and even a super powerful blast breath as well. So even if this is just a summoned form and not their true forms, they're still absolutely powerful just in that variation as well. Which of course makes you wonder if they are only powerful in this summoned form or if their true bodies are even more powerful than this. That's a question for another day though, because the answer to our second main question of how to defeat them seems to have been clearly shown to us in this chapter. If your Haki is strong enough, and that means stronger than Shinx, you can completely destroy their summoned forms, which is great and all, except that literally no one else in the world right now seems to have those levels of Haki. So yeah, are there any more of those Joy Boy Haki notes lying around by any chance? Probably not. So clearly Luffy and the crew still will need to level up quite a bit, but that still leaves the question of how can you defeat their actual living main bodies? Do you have to get rid of their summoned form and then attack the main body? That's at least what my guess would be so far, but we aren't sure quite yet. And then of course, we've now gone through all of this review without even talking about one of the other most insane reveals of this chapter as well. Because if you paid attention to the flashback with Emmet and Joy Boy, you might have noticed that Joy Boy is actually normal sized. Like, obviously Emmet is a giant robot, so it's a little bit hard to compare here, but Joy Boy is clearly not a giant like many people have previously speculated. I guess he technically could still be a buccaneer who are taller than regular humans, though honestly, he just looks like a regular dude to me, which is quite shocking to say the least. And not only that, he's wearing a hat, and it does sure look like a straw hat to me. And so of course we do have to ask, is this the same one that has been passed down all the way to Luffy? That would be absolutely insane if that were true. Or did Emu take Joy Boy's hat after he was defeated and then locked it away as we saw in the vault in Marijua? And then besides that, we're also shown that Emmet is already a robot at this point, which brings up a ton of interesting questions as well. Like previously, you might remember that we speculated that Emmet might have been a person whose soul was then transferred into a robot body, and that still is possible, I think, but at least for now, we can say for sure that Emmet was already a robot before Joy Boy ever died. But what's even more interesting though is that Joy Boy and Emmet seem to have had a really personal and close relationship. Based on the dialogue we get here, Joy Boy has been protecting Emmet for a very long time, and Emmet clearly means a lot to Joy Boy. And so I'd definitely say that Emmet was probably a part of Joy Boy's crew, and I just personally can't wait to find out even more about their relationship, because Joy Boy clearly had plans to help keep Emmet alive in the future as well. In fact, based on the Japanese, that was the whole point of the Haki knot, so that Emmet could protect himself even after Joy Boy had already died. Which now brings us to the very fascinating question of why is Joy Boy talking about his own death here? Did he think that he was gonna die soon, similar to Roger's incurable disease, or was he just talking more generally at some point in the far future that he knew he would die long before Emmet's robot body ever would? Now, if you made me guess, I would probably assume it's the first option. Honestly, my best guess is that this scene is taking place near the end of the Void Century, when Joy Boy already knows that that he's probably gonna lose the war, or maybe before that final battle. And so at this point, he's basically making preparations for the future so that someone else can inherit his will and continue the fight later on. You know, making the poneglyphs, giving Zunisha that task, giving Emmet that task, so on and so forth. At least that's what I think, because I actually broke down everything that Joy Boy planned out, and if you want to learn what the next step in his 1,000-year master plan is, you can watch that video right below me. As always, thanks so much for watching, and a super big thank you to those of you who already signed up to my new Patreon. You're really helping all of us make even more awesome content for you on this channel, and if you enjoy our content and want to support what we're doing here, you can sign up as well to get some awesome special perks like all of our fantastic artwork, monthly Patreon exclusive content, and of course your name at the end of each video. And I will see you in the next one.